And were they under pressure? I'm sure they were. They're afraid that there's going to be another night of looting, destruction in Kenosha because of this happening and the way the word got out. He traveled across state lines. He was here. He brought his AR with him. The AR was here. He was a white supremacist looking for trouble. Nothing. Nothing. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, when we picked you guys as jurors, we asked you if you could decide based upon the evidence that happens in the courtroom. Not what you'd heard before.
All right, let's see what this is.
Not all of the lies and untruths.
I'm a little late to the game, but I figured I'd put it up anyways.
I heard one
just for the hell of it.
Guy say, my client discharged the gun 60 times. Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening in court is what you decide the truth on. He was charged on the 27th. Still, they didn't have the information, the autopsy's final, anything like that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a rush to judgment. Richie McGinnis, I talked about earlier, citizen journalists. Mr. Binger talked about him seeing guns. But remember the cross of Mr. McGinnis. Guns are not legal in Portland, Washington, or D.C. or New York. They're not allowed on the streets. You can be arrested. There are state laws. And ladies and gentlemen, the gun in this case is no longer an issue. Whether or not it was a dangerous weapon as it applies to the charges is. But my client is no longer charged with minor in possession of a firearm. But he needs his AR-15 and the assault weapon and the fear that goes with that to try and bring home an unjust guilty verdict. Ryan Balch had never met Kyle Rittenhouse before the evening hours of the 25th, has never spoken to him or known him after. And yet the state wants you to believe he made up something about a threat to kill. Why? What's in it for him? The threat. If I get either of you alone, I will kill you. That is a threat with a statement and a promise. And lo and behold, the chance presented itself to Mr. Rosenbaum, and he attempted to execute it. And I don't for a minute believe that he would have done it if it was Mr. Balch, who's much bigger than my client, muscular, well-built, and much more assertive and forceful. Rosenbaum, like any, as he referred to him, I don't even know what he called him, a ragdoll, whatever, but the little guy who gets beat up likes to go after the next littlest guy. He saw Kyle alone, and that's what he chose to. Or he could have been mistaken and thinking it was the other person at the ultimate that he went after and had to be held back. They were dressed very similarly, baseball caps, mask, and the only difference was the difference between shorts and a long pants. I can't answer that.
Yeah,
Mr. Rosenbaum at this point, I guess, can't either. But you see Mr. Rosenbaum right around the time in question at that location, menacing with his chain. I'm going to finally get this right. I skipped. That's Mr. Balch. I talked about him going on. Ms. Amber Rasmussen, she was the DNA expert. What I say to you is DNA is an incredibly useful tool, but DNA is only as useful as what you put into it. And if DNA shows anything, it shows that it's not proof positive in this case. We know in hearing from Dr. Kelly that he most probably touched the gun. It was a contact wound is the way he described it. And we know through the videos, Huber touched the gun with his bare hand, and yet no DNA was found on that gun. So don't let your eyes deceive you. Don't let the physical evidence be discounted because of what she said. The end of that barrel was not swabbed. And we know he had to be at the end of the barrel, or it would have had the soot on all of the fingers. Jason Lukowski, thought was an interesting witness. He was the Marine who put the phrase, shout, shove, show, shoot. And I asked him about that, and I don't for a minute disbelieve that that's the Marines' rule. Is there any retreat in there? And he said no. He looked at me like I was stupid. The reason he looked like that was because they don't retreat. Yet Kyle Rittenhouse did retreat. He tried getting away from Mr. Rosenbaum. He described Joseph Rosenbaum as belligerent, with malintent, used the N-word, did the false step thing, did not see Kyle as aggressive. He was there for a shorter period of time than anyone else at CarSource. He also cleared Gage Grossquist's gun after the shooting and made it safe, took the shell out of it. And I ask you to think back to the direct examination of Mr. Lukowski by the state. When they asked him, what did Kyle say to you? His first statement was, I just shot somebody, I need help. That's what he testified to. And then Mr. Binger shows him the statement and gets him to say, well, I told the FBI that. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what he told the FBI. The FBI
Stream froze up. I have to give it a minute, see if it comes back. See if it comes back. That's a little weird. Okay, give me a sec here. Let me try to figure out why that's not loading. I don't know if it's just the courthouse stream.
Not advice that was followed. Wish it had been. Carrie Ann Swart, I talked about.
Let me see here.
Said, I just got out of jail and I'm not afraid to go back. He'd been off his meds for the week prior.
There we go.
The videos of Joseph Rosenbaum show the state that he was in. No proof that he ever took his meds. Saul Kindiri, he was the first of the Kindiri brothers to testify. CarSource. He's in the
Hart,
picture
how you doing?
with all the people who protected his property. He's there, and he said he just liked the military garb. Why did he get a picture then with just one of them? How did he wrangle all these people up? Everybody in that picture said that they wanted him there. They gave him permission. Even Dominic Black concurred in that, the state's witness. But as I said earlier, they want these two guys to dirty Kyle up. He's just picking a spot to pick trouble and to be there and cause problems. He was asked to provide security. He did. They deny that they were going to pay any money, yet Nick Smith says they were. And going to pay money to Nick Smith. And ladies and gentlemen, do you get the feeling that they're a little afraid of being sued, as everybody else in this case is? I think so. And when they were up there, I don't remember them saying, oh, you can protect CarSource 2 or Car Doctor, but don't go to Car 3. They had somebody arranged to protect car source 3, and the word came in that they had left. Dominic, Balch, Joanne Fielder, all of them say they had permission. Why would they lie about that? How does that protect them?
The National Guard was put there?
They're not charged with anything. Who's the people who are lying here? Sal and Sam. Next, Police Officer Widener. He was the ET. He went and recovered some of the 2.23 rounds from car source. I believe he found 3 of them. The other 2 were found 3 days later. He photographed a mask. He didn't find the bag, and we do not concede that there was nothing in that bag. Not for a minute. They have the burden of proof. They have the burden to preserve a crime scene appropriately, get the evidence, and show it to you. Ryan Balch said he smelled ammonia and bleach. They didn't find the fire extinguisher. We know that the fire extinguisher was there. It's in the videos. But that doesn't fit in the state's narrative of Kyle actually going there to put out a fire, which had been started earlier in the Duramax. Officer Van Wee recovered the last 2 shell casings. Strike that. I love technology. Officer Van Wee. Officer Moretti. He was the driver of the squad car that Kyle tried to surrender himself to. He said it was a war zone. It was a war zone those 3 nights. He described it as the city on fire. The police felt as though they were completely surrounded, described the constant gunfire that evening. Mr. Binger wants to slough it off as fireworks this. It really wasn't that bad that night. Ladies and gentlemen, it was hell in this area downtown. There were violent people causing trouble.
Yeah, they are, eh?
And the state wants us to believe it was okay. The police pushed them back. Now they could leave. Car source was safe. And I can't remember specifically what witness it was, but it stuck out in my mind. The witness said the police pushed him back, let him back, pushed him back, let him back. And a lot of the burning happened late at night, that witness said. Gage Grosskowitz. 10 million reasons to change his statement. His attorney is sitting in the courtroom, has been sitting in the courtroom when he testified. If he's just your average complaining witness, why get a lawyer? What do you got to hide? He didn't have a valid concealed carry permit. He wasn't charged. He lies to the police about being armed that night. He said he dropped his gun going down the street. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what's called obstructing. Most people, when you lie to the cops, especially in a murder investigation, you get in a little bit of trouble. I've represented some of those people. Not Mr. Grosskowitz, because he's their star witness. Bought, paid for, and protected. You don't want us to search your phone? Oh, we're going to invoke the never heard before Marcy's Law exception to the search warrant, even though they had a signed search warrant by a judge of Kenosha County. He was also an armed medic. Wants you to believe that he didn't have one in the chamber and he would never shoot somebody. But before he said that, he said key, wallet, phone, gun. Never leaves the home without them. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't carry a concealed weapon. And I don't think I could shoot somebody. But when people carry guns, that's what they're for in the city. This isn't the Wild Wild West. He had his gun. Kyle Rittenhouse had run by him. You'll see the picture. Was by him, gone. Did he go to give medical help? He didn't know that Mr. Rosenbaum was being tended to. No, he decided to run in and advance on the fray. He, the affiliated with the American People's Revolution here in Wisconsin. And I might have that one word wrong, but he did it. And who ultimately put the tourniquet and fixed it on his arm? But Mr. Lukowski, a member of somebody he refers to as the militia and the Stooges. Two different encounters between Gage Groskowitz and my client.
I'm doing good.
The first one,
I'm doing good. Just
he
trying
does
to
not
work and do
show
this at the same time.
or give any indication of a weapon. My client does not point a weapon at him, does not shoot at him, does not swipe the weapon towards him. He states he's going to the police. That is uncontradicted. Why doesn't Mr. Groskowitz let him be and go give aid and comfort to his fellow rioter? But instead, he joins the mob, chasing Kyle, arms himself, and runs in the fifth or sixth person into the melee in scene 2. And when his friend was called, his friend said in his Facebook post, his only regret was not emptying the clip into the kid. So we know what his intent was. We know what he wanted to do. Kyle shot first as he was coming in. And Mr. Binger talks about, oh, he was going to grab the gun. Ladies and gentlemen, left hand, phone. How's he going to grab a gun with a hand filled with a phone? Right hand, gun. He goes back, loads up, and is advancing. That's when Kyle shoots him. He didn't shoot him when he put his hands up, and if that was it, no intent to harm him, all he does, like everybody else, is back up, and nobody else gets shot. But Mr. Groskowitz decides he's going to shoot my client. Unfortunately, my client shot him first. If he had retreated, it's over. And when he's got his hand up like this, as I said earlier, the hands are up. It's not gripping the gun, it's loose. But when he goes in like this, the pistol grip is tight. Heather Williams, Crime Lab, she testified that the gun works. I have no dispute regarding that. Detective Krieger, he was in the passenger seat of Moretti's car, pepper sprayed, did not get his ID, didn't ask him about the gun, just told him to go home. Kristen Harris, Rundown Live, stated the video, we showed the video to start this, clearly depicting Mr. Rosenbaum standing there at Car Source 2 shortly after the dumpster, standing there with his chain, the shirt tied up over his head. But Mr. Binger says it's impossible for him to have threatened my client. That's garbage, just like his case. And Mr. Binger makes so much out of him one time saying, stay on your property. My client has as much right to go anywhere in downtown Kenosha as anyone else. Just as the rioters did, and as he walks out to see if anybody wants medical help, he's not doing anything wrong. He's not doing anything to provoke anybody. Detective Antaramian, the juxtaposition of him and Howard, as I said, he is the one who talks about what he sees in the video, totally different. As you see, why did Mr. Rosenbaum go behind that car, 2 cars over from the Zeminskis? What was he doing over there? Why was he doing over there? And why does he come out as soon as Kyle comes down the road? Because they were going to ambush him. They had set it up, and I'll show you the video. James Armstrong. The only thing I can say about James Armstrong is, okay, that's interesting. But what I'd like to say about his photographs, his knowledge of what he did, and some of the statements that the state has made regarding it is, what he did for those 20 hours is hocus pocus, and he makes an exhibit that is out of focus. And that's what the state is relying. The picture does not make sense. As I showed earlier, it has Kyle shouldering the gun in the left shoulder. If he has it in the left shoulder, his back would be to the drone. The drone is moving around, and that changes the focal point. He's right-handed. That's where it goes. You'd see the crosses across his chest. But no, they need him to have somehow pointed a gun at the Zeminskis. I don't for a minute concede he did, but we know that Mr. Zeminski has been armed all evening. How would pointing a gun at Mr. Zeminski provoke Joseph Rosenbaum, who, according to the state, earlier in the case, they didn't even know each other? But I think they had to run away from that because there's so many pictures of them together. Mr. Armstrong's photograph, testimony, it took 3 days and 20 hours worth of work to come up with that picture. It went from color to black and white, and he admitted he never compared it to the original photograph. Still shot. Didn't take into consideration the fact that the drone was moving. The word peer-reviewed, the state has said. Peer-reviewed is an independent verification of the events, the exhibit. So there was no testimony to this because it didn't happen. That Mr. Armstrong's coworker
I think he'll get
did
off
20
on it, but
hours
I don't
on
know.
the
We'll
same
have to see.
photograph and came up with the same result. It didn't happen. When you see, and I'll show it to you later, when you see in the video the mirror and the shininess of the mirror,
So
that's
the whole
what
thing
that
is messed up.
And by going around, spending 20 hours and bringing things up, it doesn't account for Kyle's arm. It doesn't account for the heat signature of the gun. None of it. Dr. Kelly. Personally, my favorite witness, because physical evidence doesn't lie. The soot, extremely close, if not touching. The location of the soot, I had him circle it on the exhibit. On redirect, after I had him do the demonstration and draw on the photograph, the state tried to get him to back up his opinion and back it off. He wouldn't, because the physical evidence doesn't lie. It's, as they say in the business, an inconvenient truth. They can't change it. It is what it is. That's the demonstration that happened in front of you, the gun and the hand. And if the individual's coming straight at it, the barrel of the gun, it would go through the hand like this. But we know that it was coming from right here, going down, and came out with a very clean exit wound. No soot here at all. So we know that the gun can't be here. We know there's just a little bit of soot on what's commonly referred to as the ring finger right here, and the bulk of it goes this way because it was over the gun, touching the gun. And Mr. Bigger says he was swiping at the gun. Ladies and gentlemen, he didn't need to chase him, didn't need to keep chasing him, didn't need to lunge at him, didn't need to swipe at the gun, i.e. grab the gun. And the shot to the back, as I said, 4 shots in 3/4 of a second. He's backing up, trying to stay away from him, shooting, and he shoots until the threat is immobilized. Ladies and gentlemen, other people in this community have shot somebody 7 times, and it's been found to be okay. And my client did it 4 times in 3/4 of a second to protect his life from Mr. Rosenbaum. I'm sorry, but that's what happened. And this is the prosecutor who said he shot him in the back. He shot him in the back on a horizontal
it's gonna be good. It's
plane,
gonna be good.
consistent with lunging. The shot goes in here and ended up in his lower hip across the back. If he's on the ground or down and shot, the bullet goes into the back and ends up in the stomach or on the other side. It cleared back here, ended up in the lower hip. That's because he was on a horizontal plane when Kyle shot him.
Be right
He had
back.
stippling
One sec, guys.
to the stomach from the first. The pants stopped it from lower, but it was still on the upper. The furthest he was away when the first shot was fired was 4 feet and closing. 4 feet. I think it was Mr. Kraus and I who had to fight about how far 4 feet is. It's not that far. It's not that far at all. Brought a tape measure so I could measure a gun barrel for you today, but that's no longer an issue. So I'll show you what 4 feet is. No doubts. From the edge of the jury box to my foot right here, 4 feet. Lunge, grabbing the gun. Think how close that is. Think how fast that distance is closed. What was Joseph Rosenbaum doing? Was he running after my client to give him a key to the city of Kenosha? Was he running after my client to say, hey, thanks for providing security? Use your common sense and your judgment. Look at Mr. Rosenbaum's behavior throughout the night. As I showed you, these are the pictures. One last. I'm going to get you the pointer. Exhibit 105, Dr. Kelly. So, right here. Here's entry. The exit's right over here. Goes across, clean, came out right there. This right here, nothing. Nothing on the back part of the hand, no soot. We know what was over the barrel. Remember Mr. Kraus asking the doctor, well, what about that big puff of smoke? That wouldn't have an effect. Soot only goes so far. That was Dr. Kelly's testimony. He doesn't have a dog in the fight. He looks at the bodies, says what they are, makes a determination, and looks at the evidence. We had an expert, didn't call him because Dr. Kelly told the truth. Couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, facts and truth matter. In most trials, the case would have ended with Dr. Kelly. But we wanted to bring you our side of the story. We had nothing to hide. We were going to put on a defense. I heard Mr. Binger say red herring. The red herrings in this case are by the state, talking about super bullets, this metal jacket. I've been involved in homicide cases. One time it's a metal jacket. The next time the problem is the person had hollow points. Hollow points are designed to kill. Full metal jackets are to go through people. Ladies and gentlemen, bullets are bullets. Hate to tell you. At close range and close contact, they wreak havoc on a body and they kill people. No dispute. Wants to keep pointing at the militia, the militia, the militia. He knows Kyle's not a member of the militia. He has no evidence that he is. They went to the websites. They went to TikTok. They went all of that. All they can do is put up a little thing of a 17-year-old kid from his TikTok trying to be famous. Kyle shot Joseph Rosenbaum to stop a threat to his person. And I'm glad he shot him, because if Joseph Rosenbaum had got that gun, I don't for a minute believe he wouldn't have used it against somebody else. He was irrational and crazy. Talked about active shooter, the power of those words. My client didn't shoot at anyone until he was chased and cornered. Nick Smith. Got a phone call from Sam, asked on the second night of rioting to go down there. They used the power washer and buckets to try and put out cars. He did that out of the goodness of his heart. Sam asked him to come and protect the next night and be paid, and he agreed to do it.
Crazy.
He asked some of his friends to come with the help. Kyle, Dominic Black, talked about another father and a son, and then the people from West Bend showed up. He said that when they first saw Sam on the 25th, Sam gave him a hug and thanked him for protecting his property.
It's definitely self-defense.
He was on the roof
Dead.
when it was chemical bomb. He knew that Sam was grateful for their presence, but he also knew that people on the ground needed weapons. He heard Kyle when Kyle came back saying, "I had to shoot." Body armor. I don't know why the Grays Lake Cadet Program gives people body armor. Don't know. My client had it, and if he wanted to be an active shooter, as Mr. Binger wants to portray him, why would he give up his body armor? Nick Smith wanted body armor. He goes, "Here, Nick, use mine. I'm going to be doing medical." Helping other people. You see him do it throughout. He gave Nick his body armor. Why would somebody give up their body armor if they're going to go out looking for trouble, seeking confrontation? Doesn't make sense. Joanne Fielder, she described Joseph Rosenbaum wearing a red shirt with a green earring. She described yellow pants, who I'll get to later. She stated Joseph Rosenbaum yelled he was going to kill us MFers and cut their hearts out. JR's arm goes up, and within seconds, they're tearing up from a gas bomb. She couldn't say for sure that she saw him throw it, but obviously that's the circumstantial evidence in her belief. She never saw Kyle act inappropriately with anybody, point a weapon at anybody. The size of the weapon might change, but it doesn't change what it can do. Presence speaks volume. It's a deterrent, and they've been pelted all night long with rocks. She was aware that they had consent to be where they are. Nathan DeBruyne. Interesting witness. He was out there taking photographs on the nights in question, more importantly the 25th. He filmed the destruction of this community, uptown, downtown, and the ATF and the FBI found out about his videos, his still photography, which I think was incredible. They wanted it, and what did he do? Didn't ask for money. He gave it to them. He sat down with the detective and gave a full interview, showed him the photographs, talked about Mr. Rosenbaum and all the problems he was causing that night, the things he was doing. And that's within less than a month after this. He'd never met Kyle Rittenhouse, didn't know Kyle Rittenhouse, but he had a feeling about what happened that night. And he said if there was trouble, Mr. Rosenbaum was there. I don't think any truer words have ever been repeated. Did he have a lawyer when he met with Detective Howard? No, he didn't. When did he get a lawyer? Remember? After he met with Mr. Krause and Mr. Binger. Mr. Binger, the person who's made it his personal goal of putting my client's head on his wall. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what it did. And it means he's been cutting corners. And Nathan DeBrune said, after meeting with Mr. Binger, I was very uncomfortable. He tried to put words in my mouth. And he had to go and hire a lawyer to protect him. First, it was show him the videos and then ask him the questions, trying to put words in his mouth. He didn't want that to happen. He wanted to be able to tell his story of what he knew, what he did. He talked about Zeminski, the photographs of all the conduct that Zeminski had done that night, and I'll show you some of them. The photos have a timestamp on them, and he related to Detective Howard in September of 2020 about Joseph Rosenbaum yelling, "I just got out of jail and I'm not afraid to go back." Those are his words that he heard Mr. Rosenbaum. It was not objected to by the state, and there's been no proof that he wasn't in a jail. They want you to believe he was in a hospital. There's no medical records he was in a hospital. There's no medical records he was properly medicated. And I submit to you that in this case, the way he was behaving, I don't think he was properly medicated. There's pictures of him with the trailer fires, the chains, starting numerous dumpster fires. I submit that he was with the Zeminskis on many of the occasions, and he was emboldened by Mr. Zeminski because Mr. Zeminski was always brandishing his firearm. We saw Joseph Rosenbaum taking the chains. He chose to come down and riot, and that's what he did. Nathan DeBrune chronicled that. Why did he chronicle it? Because it's not very interesting if you take a picture of a protester who's just standing there, but Mr. Rosenbaum was involved in all these different things, and I'll show you those pictures. Lucas Zanin, Kenosha County resident. Every now and again he goes down to Texas in the winter. Testified, born and raised. He stated he had empathy for the small businesses of Kenosha, did not want them looted, did not want them burned. Is that somehow to be called into question? Does any of us want those fires started and to come and burn? I don't think so. He authenticated the video that was taken from his car as accurate, showing the south side of car source 3. And you watch that video and you see people destroying someone else's property. During the video, you look at the one wall, there's nothing there. You see somebody spray painting on it, and they've written the word loot on it. You see another individual going in the hood of the car, trying to do something. It's not his car. He's not some roadside mechanic. They're destroying property. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Binger and I will go round and round about it until the cows come home. They were rioters. They weren't demonstrators. Were the demonstrators down by the courthouse earlier in the night? Yes, there were people doing a legitimate demonstration. These people were rioting. And you see in his tape, they're hitting the cars with pipes. You hear the glass breaking. You see the people jumping on it. And the important part of it, and I'll show it to you, is you hear the first bang, which is Mr. Zeminski's shot. 2 seconds later, you hear the next shot, and then you see the exodus of all the people taking off from that. That's why Kyle couldn't run and continue to run from Mr. Rosenbaum, which he was under no legal duty to do whatsoever. Jacob Marshall referred to himself as Gage Groskwitz's best friend. We brought Mr. Groskwitz's best friend in as a witness because he had posted something on Facebook immediately after this. He testified He couldn't find Gage Groskowitz because he was under an anonymous name at the hospital. Nobody knew who Gage Groskowitz was, who Jacob Marshall was. But he takes it upon himself to post a Facebook message talking about how, could I have the next slide, please? I just talked to Gage. To his only regret was not killing the kid and hesitating to pull the gun before emptying the entire mag on him. Coward. Here's the picture of them hugging each other at the hospital when this is posted. Ladies and gentlemen, why does somebody post something like that? Because that's what his friend told him. And he wanted to get Gage Groskowitz's word out. He didn't repost and say, I lied. He took it down to try and hide it. But unfortunately, the internet has a memory. Next witness was Kyle Rittenhouse. I've done with the Kandari brothers. We did recall them, but I talked about that. Kyle Rittenhouse did not have to take the witness stand to tell his story. It was told through video. He wanted you as the jurors to hear his personal experience of the night of the 25th. He knew Mr. Binger would cross-examine him for hours, and he was willing to get up on that witness stand, take the oath, and tell his story the best way he could. And he did. Could Mr. Binger pick on him and find little things about it? A little bit. Did he damage his credibility? I don't think so. Getting to Mr. Yellow Pants, which he's been talked about. Mr. Binger talks about, he says with sarcasm.
Damn internet, eh? As soon
Ladies
as,
and gentlemen, you've
as
seen
soon
the
as you
video.
post it, it's
But
out
remember,
there. Someone's going to
when
screenshot
Yellow
it.
Pants said to Kyle, he goes, you held your gun like this. That's low ready. That's not like this. It's down. He never pointed his gun at him. Did he have a gun? Yes. Did he tell him to get off a car? Yeah. But when he said it to Kyle, Kyle said, I did, and walked away, not wanting confrontation. And remember Richie McGinnis's testimony about that. There was the individual with the slingshot, there was the individual with 2 rocks in his hand, and the other individual with the gun. And when Mr. McGinnis walked up to him, he immediately had to put his hand down because they were the one advanced on him, and he bought him off with a White Claw.
You guys don't have like citizens arrest or anything like that over there, do you?
My client, when this happened, was 17 years old. His actions are to be judged as a 17-year-old, not by Mr. Binger's standards, but by that of a 17-year-old. And Mr. McGinnis said he didn't appreciate the way people looked at him. And maybe he didn't. And I think the best evidence of that is when Mr. Rosenbaum begins chasing him, you hear on the tape he yells, friendly, 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 3 times. He thinks that if he just says the magic words, they'll stop. They don't. They could have, Mr. Rosenbaum could have looked at it and said, hey, you're not trying to harm anybody. I'll leave you alone. Is that what happened? No. He said, you ain't going to do
A lot of red tape,
shit,
though. Wow.
mother effer, and began to continue to chase him. Mr. Rosenbaum made a fatal mistake. That day, chasing Kyle Rittenhouse into the corner, he ran as far as he could, and he shot 4 times in 3/4 of a second. Mr. Binger makes so much of Kyle's residence.
The guy was provoking
Antioch,
Kyle
Illinois.
all night long.
I think most people here know where it is. It's not a foreign country. Antioch, Illinois, right across the border. He worked in Kenosha. His dad lived in Kenosha. His grandmother lived in Kenosha. He worked in Pleasant Prairie. His best friend, Dominic Black, lived in downtown Kenosha. They want you to believe that there's some sinister thing about that. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a very mobile world. I'm from the foreign country of Racine, Wisconsin, 13 miles away, a little bit further. I'm on the north side. Ladies and gentlemen, when Kenosha burned, people who like Kenosha, they hurt. I remember 34 years ago walking into this courtroom, first time I ever appeared as a lawyer, back in that conference room. And when I saw what happened in Kenosha, it bothered me. Those 3 days. People can protest, but people can't indiscriminately burn property for no reason of innocent people. How does that further anyone's cause? Kyle feels for this community. He worked as a lifeguard. When he came down here, are we to believe that he's working to clean up graffiti, not getting paid because he's here to look for trouble? Is this all some master plan? That's ridiculous. He came down here trying to help, to see the damage, and that's what he did. Kyle, next. Dr. John Black, his testimony about the slides, making times, and I'll go over some of those. But specifically, as I argued earlier, the zero shot from, I should say it this way, friendly 3 times to the first shot, 10 point some seconds. There's a change in elevation in the video as he's lunging forward. The shot rings out after that. The zero shot, which is shot 1, then 2 2600ths, the next one 24, 23, for a total of .739. He gets up, he comes around the car because all the individuals had left. After hearing the shots, goes to check. And to believe that he could stay there is preposterous. All I said would have happened, scene 2 would have been moved to scene 1. You heard the one individual yell, "Get the F out of here." The Zeminskis are screaming, "He just shot him, he just shot him, get him, cranium." That's all happening. Mr. Zeminski's walking around with his gun over his head, pointing at Kyle, and I'll show you that in a little bit. In the exhibits that Dr. Black showed the jury, no color was added, no color was subtracted. The videos didn't go from color to black and white. There was no structural problems. He demonstrated his technique regarding changing brightness and contrast right in front of you. And the one video went from a dark mess of nothing, moved the 2 lines. I don't know how to do it, but he did right in front of you, hit it, and all of a sudden it's light and you can see it. The whole event that evening took 2 minutes and 55 seconds from the 3 times friendly to the time he surrendered or attempted to surrender at law enforcement. Officer Brittany Bray, let me go through the, back up to the first one. Total time, 2 minutes, 55 seconds, according to Dr. Black. Next, friendly, the 4 shots, 10.8 seconds. Those are the shot times. Remember the sound he put and synced up with the video? That was the audio graph, the green thing he showed you. You can see when the shot is fired, he matches it up, times them out by the frames per second. You come up with those numbers. And that's because when you show something in slow motion, it looks like somebody can really have the time to think, process, and do all that. You have to remember how fast all this was happening in event number 1. He's running, the bag is thrown, he turns, addresses, keeps running, and makes a decision, a life and death decision, that he has to turn around and address the threat of Mr. Rosenbaum. At that point, Kyle is stopped. Mr. Rosenbaum, like those other people in event number 2, could have put up his hands and just backed up, made a bad decision, shouldn't have done it. No, he goes diving for him, yells the FU, and is going for his gun. Next. Event 2, I have it beginning when he's hitting the head with the rock and ending with the fourth shot, taking 14.9 seconds. Next, police officer Brittany Bray measured the gun, the pullback, the slide, 4 inches, brought the ruler out, because you never see in event number 2 Kyle pull back the 4 inches, slow motion or otherwise. There were no unfired bullets found at the scene for the AR. There was the unfired bullet by the clip and the Glock that had been cleared from Jason Lakowski. Drew Hernandez. Mr. Binger, for some reason, didn't like Drew Hernandez. You could hear it in his questioning. Ladies and gentlemen, Drew Hernandez had a point of view. There's no doubt about it. But what was that point of view? He's a citizen journalist, and he's covering the riots. And he didn't think that the mass media was covering the riots correctly. They were just calling everybody demonstrators and not covering the devastation and the destruction that was being done. That's his point of view. It's kind of my point of view too. But does that mean that his video's lying? Does that mean when he says, I saw him lunge, that he's lying? He doesn't have a dog in this fight. He tried to get all of his video to the state. The Dropbox wasn't big enough. He sees that the case is going to trial. He reaches out, gets a lawyer, and provides it simultaneously to both of us, and we end up playing it. He describes the Zeminskis, Joseph Rosenbaum starting fires in the dumpster, the yelling. He sees Kyle, the yelling of the word, the N-word. He sees Kyle walking around yelling medical, medical, right up until the last time when event number 1 starts. He was standing right at the corner, had a clear view to the first incident. He described him as charging from behind. He saw Joseph Rosenbaum throw the bag. He described hearing a shot from behind Kyle, which we all know is the Zeminski shot, the man who's never been brought before you people. And he saw Joseph Rosenbaum lunge. Ladies and gentlemen, you've sat through almost 10 days of testimony. You've heard the openings, most of the closings, and I have yet to hear Mr. Binger explain why Joseph Rosenbaum had the right to chase my client. To me, if I didn't know better, I would think he's a whiny defense lawyer. Everybody's out to get me. Everybody's lying. I'm the one who's bringing forth the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, the videos show the truth. The videos show the actions of Joseph Rosenbaum. Balch is lying. Fiedler's lying. Lakowski's lying. Richie is lying. Dale DeBrune, he's really lying because he's imputing my character. Nathan DeBrune, excuse me. Hernandez, he's lying because he's a right-wing journalist. All 6 of them are lying. And then, I forgot, Detective Howard, he's lying too, because he could see through the videos. He could see that Rosenbaum came out from hiding behind the car after my client passed the Duramax. Rush to judgment, as I said earlier, you bet. Highly charged atmosphere here in Kenosha. Make no mistake, you live here, you know. They had to do something. They had to charge the white supremacist, who isn't a white supremacist. They've never reassessed their case. They've never looked at it. They've never said, oh, Dr. Kelly, let's talk about this wound on the hand. What? That means he was touching the barrel? Or his hand was over the barrel when it was fired? Well, that means he was pretty close. No.
You lose your right.
We're going to march forward
to defend
We're going to throw
yourself
it into the hands of 12 people
you're
from
the
the
one
city
who
and
brought
let them
the gun.
do our work.
That's
Ladies
what the
and gentlemen,
prosecutor tried to say earlier.
This is a political
How
case.
ridiculous is that?
We can take politics out of it as in Democrat and Republican, but the district attorney's office is marching forward with this case because they need somebody to be responsible. They need somebody to put and say, we did it. He's the person who brought terror to Kenosha. Kyle Rittenhouse is not that individual. The rioters, the demonstrators who turned into rioters, those are the individuals who bring us forth. And I ask you to remember, and I'll show you the videos for the last time from me, the anger in the mob that was going on that night. They were not going to be dissuaded from doing things. They were pushing, firing dumpsters, destroying property, and that was... So you're saying Mr. Rittenhouse put out a fire? Yes, it was a small fire. Last time I checked, small fires turn into big fires. So, kind of stupid. James Armstrong, hocus pocus, out of focus. I've talked about him. He spent 20 hours reworking a frame in a video and averaging, having my client somehow miraculously go from a right-handed shooter to a left-handed shooter. The mirror on the truck is the arm. Their whole case relies on that one photograph that he spent 20 hours. That's how they're going to prove provocation, a word you never heard in the opening statement. It was my client chased him down and shot him in the back. Oops, can't prove that. This is the day before, car source burning, car source 1 burning the ground. What's in the foreground? The trailer will be the subject. Pictures later on. There's Kyle earlier in the day on the 25th setting up his alibi, setting up his I'm a good person story because he thinks he's going to go out and kill 3 people that night. Ladies and gentlemen, that is garbage. How would he know he's going to be photographed? And what does that do? It just shows he's interested in his community, trying to do good. Picture, Mr. Kandiri at Car Source 3. The state doesn't want Kyle to go to Car Source 3. According to the state, he has to stay at Car Source 2, 59th and Sheridan. Yet, Nick Smith called and asked him to go there because whoever was going to protect that property had left.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. The record does not indicate that Nick Smith made that phone call.
It's argument. Folks, you heard the evidence and use your collective recollections to determine what the truth of it is and discount anything that is not supported in the evidence.
Testimony was he received a phone call saying they were destroying cars at Car Source 3, and he went down there. First, Kyle asked for a fire extinguisher, asked the other individual to go down there with him. He said, didn't give an answer, and Kyle took off going down there to try and help protect that property. This is that night, the tear gas, the fires. Here is Mr. Rosenbaum pushing one of many dumpster fires. Right there, that's one. Another one. Stop. Bats, guns. Mr. Rosenbaum pushing it in. Either the gas station or Drew Hernandez said there were police vehicles right down here. And they're trying to push it to him. I can't hear him. I apologize. They're trying to push the dumpster down to the line of police or to the gas station. It's put out, and the reaction from Mr. Rosenbaum of dumpster number 2. You hear the voice? why you do that. Get over this. There's Mr. Rosenbaum arguing. Mr. Zeminski, the smiling puppeteer, standing behind him. Yeah, they didn't know each other. Maybe they didn't, but they sure spent a lot of time together that night. Mr. Zeminski with the yellow circle, holding his firearm, yellow pants. Kelly Zeminski with a flashlight in her hand. Last time I checked, there wasn't any lighting problems. The flashlight is a weapon to bash heads if you have to. Many people with AR-15s, not one person with an AR-15. That's the difference between this, the Ultimate Gas Station, fracas, and what happened down at Car Source 3. Kyle Rittenhouse was alone. He had been taken away from the herd, and Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Zeminski were going to get him. Movement. Mr. Rosenbaum and his bag. He's not dissuaded by the people. He's going right at him. He's not afraid of them. He's pushing in and going at them. He's not afraid of a gun. Yelling. Shoot me, N-word. Shoot me, N-word. Mr. Zeminski holding his gun down to his side, remembering this is a Black Lives Matter rally, and he's there to support their cause. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he got shot.
Mr. Huber, right there, holding him back, actually physically holding him back, but right in the middle of it. Look at the anger in his face. This here, I'll start it, but I'm going to point
Guess he
it
got
out.
what he wanted that night.
Saw a video earlier. This individual starting the Duramax on fire. Right here, jump kick, man.
Craziness. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
You see him shoot in the lighter fluid or flammable liquid. You see jump kick man being right involved.
This wasn't a protest. This
is
was
the
a
calm
riot.
Tuesday evening that Mr. Binger is alluding to. Mr. Rosenbaum, this time wearing a blue mask, tipping over the porta potty. It was just a little porta potty. The trailer. The trailer's important because it's the way he arms himself with the chain. Here's Rosenbaum pushing it. If he's just a regular demonstrator or misunderstood, a little bit upset, what does he need a chain for? What does he need a bag? Why didn't he leave it with Ms. Swart? Here, three things. The blue circle, his bag, backed up by the fire. Look at that bag. Does that look like there's nothing in it? Look at this. What is that? That's not a water bottle, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you what it is, but it's not a water bottle. Look at this. 2 feet of chain on each side. He's got it. Taken, I'm sure, from right here. The toe chain. Jump kick man. Right there, the mask, the white jeans, the black. Look at the boots. Those boots would soon be impacted my client's face.
Wow.
Rundown live. Here, Once again, Rosenbaum, Zeminski at the trailer after it's been taken down the street, set up on its side, and started on fire. You can still see one of the chains hanging from the tongue of the trailer. Rundown Live, the state showed this video. I started my opening statement with it. I was going to show you where Mr. Rosenbaum is. I've already done it. Don't need to waste your time.
Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy shit, man.
How do I get to the end? Oh. Here's the picture that we showed at the beginning. Right there, the 125-26. Mr. Rosenbaum masked with his chain during the Rundown Live
Peaceful
video.
protest.
Mr.
Nothing
Rosenbaum
more than a peaceful
with the
protest.
chain. So I said earlier, look at how Kyle's dressed. Look at the pack on his left side, left hip. The crosses going across the front and the back of his chest. Nowhere in the magic picture is that depicted. 11:40, he's crossed over that line, asking people if they want medical, runs into Yellow Pants. He walks away from confrontation. And Yellow Pants said, "You pointed your gun at me," and he goes like this, low ready. The individuals who were there with him, slingshot, rocks in the hand, gun. Mr. McGinnis. Kyle, after having the brief thing with Yellow Pants, he goes away from them, goes over, looks for Mr. Balch. They might have been close to one another, but they did not find one another. He tries to go back. Wants to get back to car source 2. After that, he goes back and waits. He gets the phone call. He testified about the phone call, either from Nick or Dominic. And what does he do? He gets a fire extinguisher. He hasn't had a fire extinguisher all night, but he gets a fire extinguisher. The circumstantial evidence shows the call came through. He testified the call came through. You know, if it wasn't in his phone, the state would have brought it up. But now they're playing games once again. This is Drew Hernandez's video. It starts in color and goes, starts in black and white and goes to color. You have Jump Kick Man, the Zeminskis, and you'll hear Kelly Zeminski talking. And during the first part of the trial, we saw this trailer go by, and it cut off the view from this location. And I'll stop it a few times and did you hear that? Talking about a pepper ball exploding in her ass. That's Kelly Zeminski speaking. It's blurry. Keep your eye here and here. Kyle will come to you. That's Kyle right there to the right of the garbage can by that splurge of light. Mr. Rosenbaum, as soon as Kyle is coming, gets up and starts walking away along with Kelly Zeminski, this individual.
So Kyle just was putting out fires and everything else all night long. He took out the trash and he prevented it from burning. There's Kyle.
There. That's Kyle. With the fire extinguisher walking. Doesn't say anything to any of them. They see him coming. They head down to do their ambush. He's not chasing them. He's not running after them. He's walking down to put out the fire. Let's start it over again.
You know, see what these guys, what Kyle should have had on him was a camera recording or something. That would have squashed everything if he just had like a body cam.
Friendly. That is the start of Mr. Rosenbaum chasing Kyle. Now they come in. He's thrown. It goes to the small. He's thrown the bag.
Duramax just got. Oh, that Duramax got fucking big.
Stop.
Boom. Kyle's numb. Look at him. He's numb right now. He's just numb.
That's shown on the drone video. It's shown on the FBI video. Skidskis are standing right here, and that's when the chase is on.
Yo.
You can hear the destruction of the vehicles as he approaches. Gun. And he's off and running. We've seen the videos. Here is the Zanin video, parts of it. As I said, watch for the first shot. Look at all those people standing there. A wall of people destroying
Uncle Wayne,
cars.
how you doing?
The state wants Kyle to run into that wall of people. Listen for the first shot and watch the lackadaisical attitude, and then hear the 4 shots in quick succession and watch what happens.
Oh shit. They shooting. Oh shit. Oh my god.
Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. The first shot happens, they barely begin to move. Between the first shot and Kyle's first shot, which is the second shot you hear, Kyle has turned around. Why is he turned around? Because that wall of people is there and he has nowhere else to run. The cars, the van, all of the people destroying property, the soda machine, he turns around and Mr. Rosenbaum keeps coming. Mr. Rosenbaum keeps coming. He lunges, gunshots. There's Mr. Zeminski with his gun down there at his side as his wife yells, "Effing get him, he just shot somebody." Which they started.
Get him.
He fucking shot him! Get him there!
Pointing the gun, once again, in his right hand.
He fucking shot him!
Take screenshots. That dude shot him.
Gage Grosskitz's cell phone video. Does Kyle ever point the firearm at Gage Grosskitz when he runs up on him? unarmed.
Shot. Hey, what are you doing? You shot somebody?
I'm going to get the police. He's going towards the police. He's continuing on. He's past Gage Grosskreutz. He hasn't shot Gage Grosskreutz. He hasn't pointed the firearm at Gage Grosskreutz. The medic, if he thinks someone shot, why isn't he there? He doesn't know Richie McGinnis is tending to him. None of the people who chase him are at Car Source 3. There is no evidence. Zeminski doesn't chase him. Zeminski doesn't want anything to do with it. His wife doesn't want anything to do with it. But the mob has now formed and is chasing him down Sheridan Road in a northerly direction.
Who shot? Who shot?
He turns all the way around, looking towards Car Source 3. Could go there. At this point, he hasn't armed himself. Kyle is zero threat to anyone. This active shooter BS is something that Mr. Binger is trying to sell you people. Has he shot anybody since Car Source 3? No, he hasn't. He's running to try and get to the police. Mr. Binger must live in fairy tale land to think that Kyle could stop, put his gun down, and say, hey, everything's good, leave me alone, I'm going to the police. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. This was real world.
Hey, stop it!
People yelling to stop him. Next picture. You saw it in opening statements. Mr. Grosskreutz chasing down Kyle Rittenhouse. Kept his gun in the small of his back. He's arming himself right here. Look how far Kyle Rittenhouse is ahead of him. No threat. He's run 2 blocks, almost 3 because it's at the far end of 63rd. He hasn't shot his gun since. If he's an active shooter looking to take as many people as possible, he's laying waste to everybody as he's running. Remember, he's got 30 bullets. He's shot 8 times, 4 in scene 1 and 4 coming up. He's not indiscriminately shooting, pointing, doing anything. Here's full speed. Pointing the gun at anyone? No. Running down the street, trying to get to those lights where the Bearcats are and law enforcement. He's not running off to the side to hide in the shadows. Blow to the head first, knocking his hat off. What has Kyle Rittenhouse done? Nothing. Trying to get away from the mob. First strike from the mob. He's not an active shooter. He's gone 2 blocks, hasn't shot anybody. Coming in behind with a skateboard at the ready, Anthony Huber. That will be strike number 1. Remember in opening statements when Mr. Binger said, oh, something happened to his skateboard. He took a swing at him. Kyle blocked it with his arm in the enhanced photos. What does Mr. Huber do? He runs, grabs the skateboard, and comes in for more. He's on the ground. Most vulnerable position you can be in. And what do we have? We have Anthony Huber here, already picking up his skateboard. With this guy with the towel wrapped around his head, coming in at Kyle. Jump kick, man. Guy who's hit him in the head. This individual. We go forward just a little bit. See if it works this far. Nope. You saw this individual over here, who's now instructed, come in at Kyle. Kyle points his firearm at him. He backs up. Kyle does not shoot. Jump kick man is leading with this foot is still on the ground. What direction is Kyle pointing right now? Watch what happens after Jump Kick Man kicks him in the face. He's turned around, he's looking in that direction. Anthony Huber coming in with the skateboard. Watch what Anthony Huber does with the skateboard. Blow to the head. Coming in, Kyle's trying to get up. Anthony Huber's hand goes onto the gun. This is the fast one. The gun is pulled away from Kyle. Anthony Huber fires. When Anthony Huber fires, Gage Grosswitz flinches, covers up. Natural, uncontrollable reaction.
Wow.
Back. Get his ass. Now here's the slow motion. He's been hit in the head. The cap is off.
Kyle's running for his life.
Anthony Huber winds up.
No problem,
Full
Uncle Wayne.
force of his body. From back here, he swings the skateboard at Kyle. Kyle senses it coming. He turns around and looks, blocks it with his arm. Doesn't turn around and shoot Anthony Huber as he's being attacked with what is a deadly weapon. A skateboard can cause death or great bodily harm, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't do it. He continues to run a couple of steps before the blow to the head and this has knocked him to the ground. He immediately changes direction, goes running for the skateboard. Want to get through this one? Okay. Now this is slow motion. Just as he's on the ground, he's set up, trying to get up. The individual to Kyle's left is the one who runs in. Kyle points the firearm. He backs off. He is not shot at. Backs up. He's now addressing the second nearest threat. Does not shoot. That individual right there in that picture is stopping. Jump Kick Man launches, contact, fire, turned around. In comes Anthony Huber. Blow to the head and neck. Now, I'm going to start it. You'll see Anthony Huber pull on his gun. And you'll see the butt of the gun separate from Kyle's body going in that direction, away from him.
Yeah, he's pulling his gun there.
Gun being pulled away from him.
The strap's holding it there, so the guy let go of it.
Huber goes down. Grosswitz flinches, freezes, stops.
Kyle didn't shoot him, look.
Hands up. No pull. Mr. Grosswitz is standing like this, and all of a sudden you see him kick his foot back and launch forward. He loads his back foot going forward at Kyle with a loaded Glock handgun. Kyle sees it coming, gets within a couple of feet, he fires. If he's got his hands up and wants nothing to do with Kyle, like everybody else, just back away and you don't get shot. Mr. Groskowitz decides he's going to take him out, and his only regret, as stated in the Facebook post,
was that he didn't kill him.
Fire first and empty his clip into the kid. He's hit in the arm. He's shot at once. He's backing up.
I think that guy got off easy. Look at how this guy gets. Look at right here. This guy here walks backwards like he should.
He gets up. You still see this individual armed with a board or a 2x4 or a fence post.
This guy puts his arms up, walks back. He put his arms up, then when Kyle wasn't looking, then attacked again. Kyle shot him.
Wheels around him. Watch what this individual does. That was the end of it. Kyle turns around. He turns. That individual steps away from him. No more shots. Doesn't shoot randomly. Shots from behind him. Continues on his way, trying to turn himself into the police.
Self-defense, 100%. 100% self-defense. Hang in there, buddy. You're going home.
People yelling to shoot him. He doesn't stop because it's not safe. Goes with his hands up to law enforcement.
Hey, he just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot all of them down there!
He ain't an active shooter. Look, he's going right to the police with his hands up.
Dude right here! Yeah.
Continues on. Hands up. You hear the story about the pepper spray. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the case. There was no threatening behavior that started this. Mr. Rosenbaum was hell-bent on causing trouble that night. He did what he did, and he started this. There are tragic parts of it, but Kyle Rittenhouse's behavior was protected under the law of the state of Wisconsin, the law of self-defense. You've heard the instructions, and I'll end with this. You decide on count one. If you decide that his conduct was privileged under the use of self-defense, you don't go on to the lesser included. If it was privileged under self-defense, that affects count two. Both of the things that happened in scene one, as I read earlier, page 9 of the jury instructions. If his conduct was privileged as to Rosenbaum, it's privileged as to Mr. McGinnis. On to the next ones. At scene 2, ladies and gentlemen, there is no evidence whatsoever that he was an active shooter other than Mr. Binger calling him that. And there's no evidence that any of those other individuals who attacked him in the mob that night were attacking an active shooter. He wasn't shooting. And if they want to be the heroes and they want to beat somebody and do what they're going to do to them, they better be right. And they weren't. Kyle Rittenhouse shot Mr. Rosenbaum because he was attacking Kyle. Every
Amen.
Person who was shot,
right, Chad?
was attacking
exactly.
Kyle. One with a skateboard, one with his hands, one with his feet, one with a gun. Hands and feet can cause great bodily harm. Sure, the state's going to get up and say, well, he didn't have great bodily harm, so it doesn't matter. That's not the standard. The standard is could cause great bodily harm. My client does not have to take a beating from the hands of this mob or the hands of Mr. Rosenbaum. And Mr. Rosenbaum might be little, but he was a pretty muscular guy. And some 30-some-year-old guy can take a 17-year-old kid 9 times till Tuesday. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a tough choice, but the evidence only leads to one conclusion. That is that Kyle Rittenhouse's conduct on August 25th was privileged based upon the actions of Mr. Rosenbaum and others. There are no winners in this case, but putting Kyle Rittenhouse down for something he was privileged to do will serve no legitimate purpose. I ask you to do this, do justice here under the law of the state of Wisconsin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Let's take
No
about
problem,
10
Chad.
minutes, and please don't talk about the case. Read, watch, or listen to any account.
No problem, Uncle Wayne. Bow. And what are they going to do? What are they doing? What are they doing? No. Man, oh man, was that intense. You know, from what I can tell, everything that Kyle did was justified. Everything. He didn't shoot randomly. He didn't shoot the buddy with the Glock right away, even though he could have, because he was coming after him with a gun. But he waited, and then he waited till it was physically coming after him. Then doesn't even shoot him in the chest, shoots him in the arm. I just don't see how this is anything other than self-defense. Gets kicked in the head, gets hit in the head. He got up when Buddy that was chasing him, ended up putting his hands up and walking backwards. He didn't shoot him. And if he was just shooting people at random, he would have shot him, but he didn't. So that shit doesn't fly with me. I don't know. That's not flying with me. As soon as they come back, I'll put it back over here. I don't know. We'll have to see what they say. How long do you guys have any predictions or what you think how long it's going to take before they make the decision? Do you think it'll take long? I think it'll take about a day. Let's say a day. I'm going to say it's going to take them a day. Hoping not, but I think a day. That's what I think. It's crazy. Absolutely friggin' crazy. Let's see. Yeah, so they're in recess right now for. I wonder if because the prosecutor already said something, so I'm wondering if the prosecutor is going to come back. I don't know. I have to see what their closing arguments say. Oh, excuse me, man. I am tired today. Crazy. I go with a day too. Yeah, at least a day. I think a day. That's what I'm gonna say. A day on everything. Like, there's no way. There's no way. He wasn't just. And if he was an active shooter, he wouldn't be running to the police. He was running straight to the police. After the first shot, he ran straight to the police. He wasn't trying to get away. He wasn't trying to go home. He wasn't being like, "Mommy, I just shot someone. Come pick me up." He was going straight to the police. So, a lot of political pressure, probably be something else happened to pressure them. I hope not. If he goes to jail, there should be riots because your freedoms are going to be gone. Like I was looking at something here. I'm going to save it for later tonight, but check this out. So on Twitter here, you guys going to get a sneak preview of some of the stuff I'm going to talk about earlier or later on. I mean, look. So right here, where was it? Let me see. Okay, well, anyways, look at this. Kyle Rittenhouse shoots criminals in self-defense. Bail set for $2 million. Harassed by the state prosecutor and the news media to this day. Says Timothy brings a gun to school, shoots 4 people, including a teacher. Bail set to $25,000 or released the next day. Kyle did a couple months in jail. So I don't know what the fuck that was about. And then there was, let me see, is this it? Oh, yeah. Here, check this out.
Going to take that gun and use it on the defendant because they know you can't convince you that Joseph Rosenbaum was going to take that gun and use it on the defendant because they know you can't claim self-defense against an unarmed man like this. You lose the right to self-defense when you're the one who brought the gun, when you're the one creating the danger, when you're the one provoking other people. The defendant fired 4 shots at Joseph Rosenbaum
you lose the
and
right.
caused 5 wounds total.
You lose the right. Let me get this straight. You lose the right to self-defense when you have a gun and the other person doesn't. Somebody want to tell these officers that are out there defending themselves with their firearms when someone comes running at them? So I guess police officers won't be, I think it's 2A. Is it 2A? I think it's 2A. Anyways, that is under attack. You know, these officers that are defending themselves when somebody comes running, I think it's 2A in the States. Your 2A is under attack right now. This isn't about anything other than the fact of taking away your guns. That's all it is. I'm just going to look this up quickly here. I think it's 2A. USA 2A. Okay, hold on. Yeah, like a lot. Yeah. So I don't know. I can't remember what it was. Anyways, long story short, they're coming for your guns. This isn't about anything other than highlighting how dangerous this can be. Crazy, crazy, crazy. He is talking to the jury. I hope they don't really understand. I hope they don't really understand. Man, you should see the people. Look at this. 30,000 people in this channel right now. Look at this chat. There's no way I would be able to interact with anybody with this many people in a chat. It just wouldn't happen. There's no way. 30,000 people, you can't do shit with that. crazy. It's craziness. It's craziness, Willis. I like what YouTube did. They don't allow they allow you to see the thumbs up, but they don't allow you to see the thumbs down publicly anymore. That's pretty cool, if you ask me. Look at this. Look, Uncle Wayne. See right here? Look, they tell you the thumbs up, but they don't tell you the thumbs down. They don't show the people the thumbs down. Pretty cool. So the haters can't hate as much as they used to on YouTube now. Da, da, da. Oh, because it was crazy. Man, okay, let's see what we got going on over here. Pandemic and rioting. The pandemic increasing risk of anxiety and therefore heart disease. Da, 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 da. Anxiety and heart disease. That's crazy. That's what a study here in Canada says. Because of the pandemic, everybody's so stressed out. He is talking to the jury. Da, da, da. That's because the White House always gets more thumbs down than thumbs up. It's comedy. Yeah, that is true. Anything to do with Biden gets thumbs down. It's messed up. It's messed up. But I think we all know. Hey, I gotta ask you guys so quickly here. Well, you guys watch me every night on Twitch. Do you like the color like this right here, this color, or like this? Can you guys give me some feedback on that? Uncle Wayne, you got a nice big screen there. So like this, or with a little bit more blue in it, blue or darker. Lighter or darker? They hope not they even an hour. Yeah. I hope it's not even an hour. I hope so too, Robert. I hope so too. So yeah, just let me know, guys, what you think. Lighter like this or darker like that? Hey, Lori. Lori, can you help me out there too? Darker or lighter? Darker or lighter? Darker, lighter. You let me know. I'll bring it back on as soon as it comes on. Right now it's they're in recess. First color looks better. Okay, so like this. This looks better. So like that. That looks better to you. Okay. What is better for you, Wayne? It doesn't matter. It's for your viewing pleasure, Vila. It's what you want. I don't care. I could have it off. I could have it off for you. So right now I have it set to like a warmer color, and then I usually stream with it like this. This is how I usually stream, with a little bit of white in there, mixed in there. But I don't know, I've been getting kind of mixed. The light leaves a shine. Like this leaves a shine. I'm shiny. So like that. Chad says light. I think this is easier on the eyes, though. Who knows? Who knows? I could go really white. Look at this. I can go just white. Look. Boom. That's actually really hard on the eyes. That's like blue as my balls. The light leaves a shine. The people are ready tomorrow if Kyle's verdict is not guilty. There, that's just blue light, Lori. How do you like that one? All right, we'll change this back down. So bright. There we go. Warm is better. Been cold lately. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. All right, we'll leave it like that. We'll leave it like that. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, we got movement on the camera there. Are they coming back? Let's see if they come back. So I was streaming on Wayne Live on Twitch. I watched what Wayne today on Twitch, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave that channel. I'm going to leave that channel just for the talk show at night and stream on Wayne Live, because there was I just have this feeling like people are going to go to it. As much as I want everything in one, I just feel like there's going to be people that are going to go to it and be like, "Oh, he's doing an IRL stream." It's not really their thing. That's what I'm thinking. But then
Yeah.
what do I know?
Up to an hour 41 minutes. Ours were an hour 45, so I think I got about 45
Free
minutes.
Kyle
If I use it all.
Oh,
As I said
their
earlier,
microphone's on.
I'm strict
Oh,
on
here we
the,
go.
rules and lax on the enforcement, so I'm not going to shut you down mid-sentence.
In that case, I'll take
Well, no, I was going to say within reason. Within reason. All right. Anything else before we start?
Here they go. Here they go. I think the prosecutors know they lost this one. Let's see. I don't like that prosecutor right there. The bigger one. I don't like him. I think he's a dick. I'm back. I just had to make some sound clips. Nice. I don't like him right there. Jubba the Hutt one there. I don't like him. I don't like him at all. Something about him that just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's because I don't know. I have no idea. He's just an idiot. Okay, come on.
Thank you, Judge. It simply cannot be reasonable for someone to be holding an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle with powerful ammunition and be chased by someone who is unarmed, who's smaller than him, who's shorter than him.
Oh, bullshit. Listen to
And the
this.
first thing that you do to defend yourself is you plug 4 rounds into it. You shoot it from about 4 feet away, and not from 4 feet from Mr. Rittenhouse, 4 feet from the end of that gun.
What an idiot.
Your first shot immobilizes him. It shatters his hip. Then he's caused to go forward. And if you watch the videos, and we're going to watch a couple during this brief rebuttal.
That's basically what you're finding out right now, is if it's legal
He immediately crumples
to protect
the
yourself.
ground. No one is saying that Mr. Rosenbaum should have chased Mr. Rittenhouse. No one is saying that Mr. Rittenhouse did not have a right to defend himself. This case is about the right to use deadly force.
I didn't
And
like
I
this
wanna
guy
talk
in
about that
Jurassic
standard
Park when he
because
stole the
Attorney
embryos.
Richards,
I don't like him now.
perhaps on accident, misstated it. He said that the standard is that it could cause death or great bodily harm to Mr. Rittenhouse, or that it is likely to cause death or great bodily harm to Mr. Rittenhouse. That is absolutely not what the standard is, and that is not what this trial is about. The standard is the defendant may intentionally use force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm, such as fire an AR-15, only if the defendant reasonably believed that the force used was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself.
Jeez.
Not, oh, if you repeatedly smash someone's face, it might lead to injury. Not, oh, this could have happened. Imminent death or great bodily harm. There's an old phrase that I could kill you with my bare hands. And there is literally no evidence that Mr. Rosenbaum was capable of that. Mr. Rittenhouse has size on him. We heard how he's a swimmer. We heard how he's a lifeguard. He's apparently in some kind of shape. Punch him in the face. Kick him in the testicles. Knee him in the face. Hit him with your gun. You don't just immediately get to shoot someone. And I don't care about provocation or any of that. Put that aside. It is not reasonable for any adult, for any person, for any 17-year-old
Even the prosecutor
male
in the back, look,
to
is
not
like,
try and
you're an
defend
idiot.
yourself first using other methods. Now you factor in provocation, the fact he had no right to retreat, or no ability to, or he had to retreat, and that he had to exhaust all methods. Clearly, if there is provocation, he's guilty. But even outside of provocation,
This is horse shit.
why do you get to immediately just start shooting? As Mr. Binger said, he brought a gun to a fist fight.
No.
And he was too
No.
cowardly to use his own
He
fist
didn't
to
bring a
fight his
gun
way out.
to a fist fight.
He
The other
has to
guy
start
brought a
shooting.
fist,
And
his
let's just
fist to a
say,
gun fight.
Theoretically,
Other way
that
around,
we
bud.
think that the 12 of you think that it is reasonable to have used force.
You don't attack somebody with a
deadly
fucking
force in
gun.
that situation. Shoots once, takes out his hip. What does Mr. Rittenhouse have to do to avoid that? Well, maybe take one step back. And Mr. Rosenbaum is no threat. And Mr. Rittenhouse is responsible for every round of that gun. It did not have to happen as fast as Mr. Rittenhouse made it happen. He could have held back at one shot.
Oh, they lost.
He could have held back at two shots.
They lost. Fuck, he's an idiot.
The guy in the blue hoodie who came in to attempt to kick him
Jury's going to see
didn't
this.
get 4 shots. Mr. Rosenbaum didn't get 4 shots. And Mr. Gross-Kreutz did not get 4 shots.
He's an idiot.
The defendant has the ability to gauge what he is doing and to stop shooting. Mr. Richards talks about the threat being immobilized. What threat does someone 6 inches shorter than you that you've already shot in the hip and is already falling to the ground have? Why do you have to keep tracking him and shooting him and ending up with a kill shot in the back? Hit him, kick him, knee him, anything else. And Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Rittenhouse are alive. Because the defense talks about games that the prosecution has played. Let's talk about games. Let's talk about how Mr. Rittenhouse on that night did not tell Dominic Black, did not tell Joanne Fiedler, did not tell anyone about this grabbing of the gun. Didn't tell anyone about, oh, I was afraid they were use the gun against me. That is because once Mr. Rittenhouse and his team understood that an unarmed person chasing him and unarmed people chasing him later on would not be enough to meet this standard, to meet this privilege, they had to concoct a story. They had to concoct a story about how suddenly I was in great fear of this gun being used. And if that's the real reason, why didn't Jason Lukowski know that? Why didn't Dominic Black know that? Why didn't Joanne Fiedler know that? You darn well know if there was any evidence of the defendant saying that the night of, we would have heard about it.
Bullshit.
So yes, Mr. Rosenbaum is 4 feet or so from the barrel
The guy
of
was
the gun.
lunging at him.
He gets shot in the hip. He begins to crumple. Now remember.
Oh, he's one of these guys
we
that
did this
walks up to the
demonstration
crown or
when
the
doctor-
jury.
when Dr. Kelly testified. This bullet entered here in the middle finger and came out here. This is how you grab something. I'm Mr. Rosenbaum trying to take this gun away. And this is how I'm going to do it, with my hand turned almost completely around, and with apparently my fingers spread, because these two don't get soot, which may mean they were on the gun or outside of the path, and the other ones do get soot. We're not talking about injuries to the palm here. We're not talking about injuries like this or any kind of grabbing injuries. We're talking about either something accidental or completely defensive to knock that gun away as he is being shot just before he is killed on the third or fourth shot. Well, we're supposed to believe that
Sherlock.
Mr.
Exactly.
Rosenbaum is
He
Jason
had this
Bourne or
strap because
John
he
Wick
knew
or
people
some
were
other
going to try
movie
to take it
star
away.
hero who's capable of killing with his bare hands and deserved the treatment that he got from the defendant. Mr. Richards' closing was quite personal. If not taking shots personally, Mr. Binger, it was gloating and boasting about his client's kills. And he talked a lot about the Zeminskis. He knows darn well that the Zeminskis are charged by my office and they have a Fifth Amendment right. This is a criminal defense attorney.
Stop.
There it is.
Stop. Let me ask you to step out for a moment, would you?
There it is. There it is. I knew it. I was waiting for it. I was fucking waiting for it. He's telling the juries to step out. There it is. Mistrial with prejudice. Let's do it. Mistrial with prejudice. Do it. Mistrial with prejudice. Let's go. Come on, Judge. Come on.
What's your objection?
It's not in evidence, and Mrs. Zeminski does have a right. Her case has been disposed of, and she did not appeal.
She did not plead or was charged with any arson, which the defense could get into, and she would have a Fifth Amendment right.
Wait a minute. As I recollect it, I think I handled the case. As I handled the Jason.
Joshua Zeminski.
What's that?
Joshua Zeminski.
That's pending.
Right.
Mr. Zeminski's case is pending, and it has been repeatedly adjourned to follow this case.
There it is.
At the state's request. I handled the case of Mrs. Zeminski, and she came in on a reduced charge. It was a recommendation, I think, for a 7-day sentence.
She was being revoked and sent to prison. I know the pictures of that case, but if Attorney Richards
she wouldn't have a right of. I think I sentenced her to 7 months in prison consecutively to her sentence, and I don't think. Why would she have a testimonial privilege any longer?
If there are charges outside of what she was charged with, she wasn't charged with any arsons.
Are you going to charge her?
I don't know. Probably not.
All of the charges out of the event were wrapped up. All of the charges out of the event were wrapped up. They can't piecemeal the charges, and to argue that she has a Fifth Amendment right now is ridiculous.
I did say Mr. Zeminski had a Fifth Amendment right, and then the objection came. I did not say Mrs. Zeminski. I can clarify that Mr. Zeminski has a Fifth Amendment right.
Well, let's find out from the reporter what was said. I thought it was just Mr.
Man, this prosecutor's a fucking idiot.
I think he said that Zeminskis are charged by my
The
office, and they have a Fifth Amendment right.
Did you say the Zeminskis? Both? All right. Well, then
I'll clarify.
I'll sustain the objection.
I understand.
All right. All right. Ask the jurors to come back in, please.
What a fucking prosecutor caught lying right there. Way to go there, prosecutor, on your fucking argument. That's going to sit well with the jury, eh? Jury's going to get all upset with that. This fucker's got us coming in and out. The fuck him.
All right, I've sustained the objection because the statement which was made by Mr. Kraus was not accurate, at least as regards Mrs. Zeminski. Any question? Go ahead, Mr. Kraus.
Ms. Zeminski was charged and convicted by my office. Mr. Zeminski still has pending charges. Attorney Richards knows that he has a Fifth Amendment right to not testify.
There he goes again.
Let me ask you to step in the library again, please.
Oh, this is going to sit well with the jury, eh? The jury is going to be so fucking mad. Oh, that jury's going to be pissed.
One, it's not in evidence. Two, if he wants to say he has a Fifth Amendment right, they also can grant him immunity. They're the only people who can. And if they're going to say that, I should have a rebuttal to explain it to those 12 people. They hold the keys to Mr. Zeminski testifying or not testifying.
We just heard 2 hours of how terrible Joshua Zeminski was, and the defense wants us to offer him immunity. That's completely our decision.
Mr. Kraus, please.
He still has a Fifth Amendment right. What I'm saying is accurate.
But you know, the question you're asking, the Zeminski case has been here on a number of occasions, and it has been either it's been a mutual request to adjourn the case. Who's his lawyer?
Mr. Barth.
Okay. It's
Jury's
been
they have to doubt him.
that it be adjourned, and I assumed, or
how are they going to believe anything he's saying now?
It would be adjourned pending the outcome of this case. No, that's not true.
No. I don't know.
Well, it's not true. It is true that I assumed it. Whether I was told that or not, I don't know.
It's not the same as Dominic Black, Your Honor. It's a different situation. Mr. Zeminski's case will go to trial on January 31st.
Well,
that's the plan.
Well, why was it being adjourned?
I think there was some. We had a witness who was not available at the last trial date, so we needed more time to get them in.
Okay. And Mr. Richards also brings up a point that you have control over the availability of a witness in terms of grant of immunity, but I don't want to get into that because I think on the first point he made, which is that I don't think it's an evidence.
I asked Mr. DeBruin about it.
What did you ask Mr. DeBruin?
I asked Mr. DeBruin that when we were talking about our meeting that he was going to be a witness against Mr. Zeminski, and that Mr. Binger talked to him mostly about Mr. Zeminski because there's a pending case against Mr. Zeminski.
Say again.
After Mr. DeBruin talked about our meeting, on cross-examination, I asked Mr. DeBruin, I believe this was a while ago, I indicated that he was going to be a witness in the Zeminski case, and that Mr. Binger asked him mostly about Zeminski, and why would Mr. Binger ask questions about Mr. Zeminski in an effort to change his statement in the Rittenhouse case. and he had no answer for that.
What's that got to do with the
Fifth Amendment right.
the district attorney is making, or the defense attorney is making?
It's that there's an open pending case against him.
There was specific testimony that there was a trial date on January 31st. That came in through Mr. DeBruin, and I actually mentioned it in my closing because it's in evidence that there's a pending case. I'm prosecuting Mr. Zeminski, and the trial's coming up in January. That is in evidence, Your Honor.
That has nothing to do with the Fifth Amendment, which is what I'm objecting to, and bringing that into this.
I don't know.
He lied again.
You're making it sound as if, well, you're making it sound, and correctly so, that Mr. Zeminski is unavailable because of his testimonial privilege. But now Mr. Richards is asking whether he should be allowed a rebuttal to, so the jury would understand that that is somewhat under the control of the district attorney. But I'm not going to, at this point, I'm not going to get further into that. I'm just going to ask you to move on to something else.
Well, my next line of argument is that the defense named them in their witness list and could have called the Zeminskis.
No, he can't, because he's got a Fifth Amendment privilege for the very reason you indicate, and privileges must be claimed as much as possible outside the presence of the jury. That's the statute.
They could have called Kelly Zeminski. They writted her here from prison.
Man, this guy's this.
Pardon me?
We had to have her available in case something came up.
Exactly,
Doesn't mean
exactly.
We have to call her. We have no obligation to put anybody on the witness stand.
Nor does the state. And
Mr.
Richards commented many times about how we could have called them, which I think was dishonest given the Fifth Amendment issue. But then also I can mention that when he set up and read his witness lists, the Zeminskis were on it, and they have the ability to call them as well.
The witness list is not in evidence.
These are opening statements, and he commented on those multiple times.
So it's not your fault. You didn't object to it. Fucking idiot. Well, this judge is thinking hard. I like this judge. I like this judge. So do you think they get sent out one more time? I'm going to say they get sent out one more time after they come back.
What was the last statement you made now that drew the objection?
That Mr. Zeminski has an open case and a Fifth Amendment right.
Yeah. Well, it is an accurate statement.
That I should be able to fill in the holes because they're the ones who can give them immunity. I can't call them.
Well, I know that, but
Why'd you subpoena him then?
you know. You can
He was saying the
no,
hallway for 2 days.
No. You address your remarks to me, both of you. To me, not to each other, please.
It's called being prepared. I don't know what's going to happen at a trial.
Okay.
I don't think the judge likes this
Well,
prosecutor.
I think I'm just going to tell the jury that Mrs. Zeminski would have been available for to be called by either party. Okay?
Fine.
Oh, man, I got out of it alive. Okay. Ask them to come in, please.
Look, Kyle smirking over in the corner. Kyle was smirking. I bet you they get sent out at least one more time. One more time. I bet you they get sent out one more time. Look at the other prosecutor. Look at the other prosecutor's face.
All right, folks, what the situation is that Mrs. Zeminski would have been available to either party to call as a witness, and neither of them has done so. Okay? Any question? Go ahead, Mr. Krause.
Thank you. Mr. Richards also mentioned that Attorney Binger talked about how all these people are liars, and he was acting like a whiny defense attorney. I don't know why that language had to be used, but Mr. Binger never said any such thing. He never called anyone a liar, except for perhaps Mr. Rittenhouse. And Mr. Richards talks about how, well, in the state's opening, you heard nothing about provocation. Mr. Richards knows that is a specific thing, that instruction we get from the judge at the end of the trial. Had we mentioned at the beginning, he would have objected. He would have objected. Now let's talk about this threat, this supposed threat. Mr. Richards talked about that gas station and showed the video, and it showed Mr. Rosenbaum at the end. Attorney Binger had said he's not in this video as it started, and you don't hear anything from him. And that is true. At the very end, he is seen standing quite a bit away from Mr. Balch and Mr. Rittenhouse. This is where that supposed threat happened. There's a distance between them. Next time the camera pans back, the protesters are pushed back. And you never hear this threat. You hear nothing. And apparently that is what the defense is accepting, is where the threat happened, although Mr. Rittenhouse actually does not accept that, because he said it happened at Blocker 2 North. So they can't agree on when the threat took place. They can't agree on where the threat took place. And it's the only few seconds of that part of the night that is not on tape anywhere. It's another concoction to give credence or to give weight that, oh, he had to defend himself against an unarmed man. There's been talk about how the defendant came around that Duramax and raised his gun. That didn't seem to be a contested issue in the case until the defendant lied about it on the stand. The defense themselves submitted an exhibit, number 41, in which it is denoted where the person that put that video together indicates Rittenhouse pointing gun at Zeminski's. I think it has a question mark. This was their exhibit. There was testimony from Detective Antaramian, and we showed this drone video. Now, but then the defendant won't admit to it on the stand, and then all of a sudden the defense has to fight it and talk about hocus pocus and make up little clever rhymes. The defendant could have told you the truth, but that hurts his case, and that gives us provocation. Now, I did have, on rebuttal, Mr. Armstrong put in 2 very blurry pictures. Mr. Binger didn't even mention these pictures in his closing, because they're maybe the 5th, 6th, or 7th strongest pieces of evidence that Mr. Rittenhouse raised his gun. But the defense is seizing on them, and they inaccurately said that it took him 20 hours of work to do. He worked on that drone video for 20 hours. He made us multiple shorter videos of it. These images were the last part of that work. And that image does show Mr. Rittenhouse holding a gun. It is blurry. Does it show every detail? No. But we thought it important that there at least be some still shot besides these videos. The second one I showed, again, is very blurry, but it's of the shooting. And you see Mr. Rittenhouse blurry, you see the puff of smoke, and you see Mr. Rosenbaum blurry, still very much upright. And that is why those pictures are given. It was the tail end of all the work that Mr. Armstrong did on this video. The defense seems very scared of these pictures because it helps to prove their client lied on the stand, and it shows that he provoked the attack. Now I would like to show you, I believe this is the full drone video, Exhibit 73. Okay, please play it. So in this one, it is difficult to see the raising of the gun because it's the full video. I would encourage you, if you find it necessary, to take a closer look at the bigger TV. Please stop it. Now, if you see in this video, Mr. Richards wants to make it seem like the only recourse the defendant has in retreating is walking into this mob of people who are breaking cars. But look at all that open space that he has. At this moment, he could have turned around and ran in that space and gone right back up Sheridan, and everyone would be alive and everyone would be fine. Instead, he decides to start slowing down and run into these cars in which he is supposedly trapped, which would be like being trapped in a Target parking lot. As you see, as we keep playing it, he goes around them no problem, and he goes right into this totally clear space that was available to him the whole time. He did not exhaust his duty to retreat. He did not exhaust all of his options. Now, I'm going to go to the video.
Are they fucking kidding? That's an aerial drone. On the ground, things look so much different.
Mr. Richards indicated that no one that attacked or that went after Mr. Rittenhouse in the second incident observed the
Kyle's
shooting.
running this way.
That is not true.
Kyle's running right in here. Kyle's coming down this way right here to where all these people were. He's coming in. He sees all these people. He stops. Turns around. Shoots. Then comes out here. He was running through.
In a wheelchair, struggling to get out of the way. This is jump kick man is right here. He sees it. He's standing there the whole time, and he comes and he helps push the man in the wheelchair out of the seat.
Jesus.
So he absolutely was
So
there.
stupid. So stupid.
He did see what happened. What's next?
Is there water upstairs?
This is Exhibit 10. This is the Ford Fisher video. If you look after the shooting,
Thank you. See if these fit.
it shows this individual pushing the wheelchair away from car source 3. There he is across the street, pushing the man in the wheelchair away out of the scene.
Yeah, you're right. RCR 3395. He has no duty to retreat. Yeah, you're right. He doesn't. He has none. Give me one.
Hello? This is a video you've seen before. It does look better on the large television, but this is where he comes into the screen. This is one of the videos that Mr. Armstrong cropped for us in his 20 hours of work. This is slowed down by 50%, and it zooms in as good as possible given the limitations of the video. I'll point it out up here, but I said it is better seen on the large TV. There he is pointing the gun. He's not close enough to the car to have that be a factor. He puts on the fire extinguisher and he raises up. It is. Now do the next student in. Mr. Pass. Oh, we got it. All right. Again, that really wasn't an issue at trial until the defendant lied about it. Now, Exhibit 84, this is another video that Mr. Armstrong did in his 20 hours of work. And this shows the part of the chase. That's where you see him point. Mr. Rosenbaum does his jump. See the defendant slowing down, seemingly preparing to shoot. And look where that first shot is. Go back play one more time. This is the zoomed in image that will eventually was shown. Look how far he's not reaching. He's being shot in the hip and falling. And he goes immediately to the ground, and the defendant sees fit to keep shooting at him, although he poses absolutely no threat. Again, 4 feet from the barrel of the gun, not from Mr. Rittenhouse himself. Here is another video Mr. Armstrong made in his 20 hours of work. I believe he made 6 of them all told. They're all on evidence. Here's a close-up of the final shooting. That puff of smoke is already out. He's already upright. He crumples immediately to the ground, but the defendant keeps shooting him. So did Mr. Rosenbaum turn and get shot in the back that way? No, he was even less of a threat. He was falling face first on the ground with his hips shattered. So yes, he was shot in the back, and he was killed by a shot in the back, and it was the 3rd or 4th shot. Attorney Richards indicated that Nick Smith called the defendant. Nick Smith did not testify to that. He was never asked. We don't know who or who called the defendant to go to that scene. And despite the fact that there's this madman out there who's such a threat and who's going to kill the defendant, he just saunters down there all by himself. No problem. He's not scared. This threat, if it even existed, was not taken seriously. He's a babbling idiot, as Mr. Lukowski said. Mr. Rittenhouse testified he didn't hear anything before he shot. He didn't hear this "fuck you." He didn't factor in the gunshot. There is no evidence that Mr. Huber did anything untowards that evening. They talked about pushing a dumpster, picking up pepper balls. That was not evidence that was ever submitted in this trial. And I don't know where it comes from. No evidence that he told Gage Grosskreutz, "I had to shoot in self-defense." And Attorney Richards talks about how, well, Mr. Detective Howard testified in a certain way, and how he didn't talk about the drone footage or anything. He knows we got the drone footage, surprisingly, after Detective Howard testified. Guns do not have handed. There's not a left-handed or right-handed gun. So, yes, the demonstration that Mr. Binger did is how it happened. The defendant was facing that way. He picked it up, and the videos show it. Detective Antaramian reviewed it and saw it and testified to it, and it wasn't an issue until the defendant lied. Videos don't lie, but we know Kyle Rittenhouse does. He lied all that night. A lot has been made about how Gage Grosskreutz had an attorney. How hypocritical from a lawyer to hear someone criticize someone else hiring counsel. Mr. Rittenhouse isn't here alone. He has lawyers. And I apologize that the district attorney's office followed our interpretation of Marcy's Law, which is a fairly recent, especially at that time, constitutional amendment.
Mr. Richards, don't wag your head.
Gage Grosskreutz is not on trial. He followed the advice of counsel not to turn over his phone, just as anyone who hires counsel can do. They can follow the advice of their counsel. We got his whole video from that night. The defense has seen it. We have it. What else do we need? Text messages from 3 weeks before? They just want to try to dig up dirt because they think it's there, because the defense wants you to believe that these people got what was coming to them, that they were bad people doing bad things, and we should be proud and boastful of Mr. Rittenhouse for killing them. Gage Grosskreutz testified what he heard, that he heard, I didn't shoot anyone, and Gage Grosskreutz acted on that. He then followed, he left Mr. Rittenhouse thinking that he was not involved in the shooting, and started going to the shooting of Mr. Rosenbaum before being told by others that saw it that he was the shooter, and then he returned. So Gage Grosskreutz relied on this statement of Mr. Rittenhouse. Let's talk about a rush to judgment. Mr. Rittenhouse turned himself in. Are you supposed to wait days, weeks, months to charge murderers who we know murdered people? It's a red herring, as Mr. Binger said. It's throwing up red herrings, false hypocritical arguments, and attacks on those that Mr. Rittenhouse killed to try and distract you from the fact that he was not in imminent fear of death or great bodily harm, and he was not privileged to act how he did. We heard from Ms. Carrie Ann Swart. Now that Nathan DeBruin talked about jail, now we can try to smear Mr. Rosenbaum more, although there really is no dispute, or was no dispute, that he came from a hospital. He's carrying a hospital bag. Ms. Swart testified that she talked to the hospital about how he would be released, that he went to this hospital. She knew he was coming home from the hospital. She knew it was in the bag, and he showed that picture of it backlit against the fire, trying to make it seem sinister. She talked about how there were medical papers in there. And we did that image again. Mr. Armstrong did this image for us, where you can get a little peek in the bag. And I would argue you can see medical papers. Though that big image they see looks like rolled up medical records that you get when you're discharged from a hospital. And Ms. Swart testified that he was given medications that day. Perhaps they didn't work. Perhaps there was a bad reaction. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But he was given them that day. He could not get the ones for future days because things were closed. Balch did not testify that he thought there was anything sinister in the bag. He said he said something inaccurate at the time, but he said that he saw shampoo bottles and a water bottle. Mr. DeBruin, he did take some nice photographs, and he clearly wanted the world to know that he took some nice photographs. He's really more relevant to Mr. Zeminski, and he apparently, this is the photo of the bag, you can examine that further. Mr. DeBruin must have some problem with police and DA's offices. He goes to the detectives, he doesn't give a full story. He says, he testified to this is not me saying anything, he forgot things because he was so nervous because the door to the police station still had an unrepaired window. That caused him such nervousness that he could not give a full statement. He meets with us in a very polite, short meeting. He has very little relevance to this case that we knew about. And yes, we showed him some videos. Is this Josh Zeminski? Oh, no, it's not. Okay, would you see him in these other pictures? Yes. You don't know it's Josh Zeminski? Okay. Somehow that's us getting him to change his statement. What's that? We show him pictures, videos, say, is that Josh Zeminski? I don't know. We show him other pictures. Do you recognize that as the same person? Yes. That's not going to change his statement. We had him read his statement. Do you have anything to add to it? No. The next day, he goes over to Mr. Richards' office. All of a sudden, he knows all this extra information that wasn't in his statement. Oh, but he was so nervous meeting with us because we showed him a video or photograph that he took of Joshua Zeminski. And then what does he do? He goes and hires a lawyer very closely connected with a gossip blogger who attacks my office on a regular basis and who is very pro-Rittenhouse. Another just funny coincidence in this case, just like how Mr. Hernandez, who doesn't live in this state, could hire any of the thousands of attorneys in Wisconsin or tens of thousands of attorneys in the state. But no, he hires an attorney who Kyle Rittenhouse's defense team has already paid money to that firm. What a coincidence. So Mr. DeBruin doesn't tell us any information, then tries to attack us, and then tells the defense a lot more information. Mr. Rittenhouse denied pointing a gun at the yellow pants man, said he was being sarcastic. Well, Mr. Richards basically just admitted he did point the gun. So which is it? We know that Mr. Rittenhouse was going around that night trying to be a paramedic, a policeman, and a fireman without receiving any real training in any of them. Tough job to do all three at once. And he went around with his gun trying to scare people, to intimidate them, to not do minor property damage.
Minor property damage?
He's a chaos tourist.
Minor property damage.
What's going on, act important, be a big deal.
Fuck.
And then the moment a little bit of that chaos comes back at him, he cowardly shoots a man instead of fighting back. You put yourself in this situation, you know it's going to be out of hand, it gets a little out of hand, someone is chasing me, and you have to shoot him.
Not somebody, a crowd
of people. That is not privileged. That is not reasonable. And that is not what any reasonable person in the defendant's shoes would have done.
Wow.
We kept hearing about this rock in this hand. There's no evidence of there being a rock in that hand. Now, there's talk about how the defendant maybe have re-racked his gun. We don't see that in the video. We don't know what he did. But we do know that as Gage Grosskreutz is sitting there with his hands up, the defendant turns over his gun and is looking at it and is doing something with it. The defendant admitted to this, that he looked at the gun. Fully reasonable that Mr. Grosskreutz could have assumed that he was re-racking and preparing to fire. And it does not mean that a unspent shell casing has to be on the ground. Officer Bray testified that she shot AR-15s. She knows AR-15s. If it jams and there's an unspent shell casing, the re-racking will take out the unspent shell casing. It does not have to be a live round. I don't know what he was doing with his gun, but it's certainly reasonable for Mr. Grosskreutz to interpret it that way. And then what does he do? He doesn't step back and take a firing position and shoot. He didn't shoot him 5 to 6 seconds earlier when Mr. Rittenhouse was being an active shooter, after having killed his second person and shot at his third. He would have every right to have stopped Mr. Rittenhouse's activities at that point. But he didn't. He came up closer, he surrendered, and he said, he believed his surrender was not being accepted. Who shoots someone like this? Is he trying to shoot his own hand off? He never does anything about an actual position to shoot that gun. And as Mr. Richards admitted in his closing, when it's pointed at his head, his arm is already blown off. We're supposed to be so scared of Mr. Grosskreutz with his Glock when the defendant is holding a loaded AR-15. Then there's this preposterous argument that, Kelly Zeminski is holding a flashlight. It must be to bash heads. Certainly no one carries flashlights at night to walk home in the dark or walk to your car in the dark. I take it when I take my dog for a walk. I'm looking to bash in heads? No. We hear about how, oh, this vicious kick that, if you watch it live, did not seem to make much contact. Spun him 180 degrees. That is Kyle tracking him with the gun and shooting at him. He's moving as he's moving. That is not the force of the kick. And the video makes that clear.
No, just me.
But again, we're grasping at straws and we're throwing out red herrings.
Where'd you find it?
And now, a skateboard is a deadly weapon. Someone should tell all the parents and grandparents and Santa Claus giving skateboards this Christmas about how they're giving their children a deadly weapon. I guess they should get them an AR-15 instead. It's just preposterous. And yes, Mr. Huber was acting heroic.
This guy's an idiot.
And taking that skateboard,
anything can be used as a weapon.
And trying to take that gun.
Like, is he that much of an idiot? Anything can be used as a fucking
weapon. The gun
weapon.
stayed attached to Mr. Rittenhouse.
So a pen. Someone stabs somebody in the face with a pen. Does this become a weapon? Yes.
They left out that it is literally strapped to him.
So nobody should go buy pens now?
He shot an unarmed man 4
on.
times because he was so scared that Mr. Rosenbaum was going to take the gun away from him when it was attached to him. It is an absolute red herring. It is an absolute ridiculous argument.
No, I'm not.
Imminent threat. Not, oh, in 5 minutes after we get beat up, then I might be a threat. Imminent threat.
Nope, not going to.
You've heard all the videos. I'm not going to go into it in any more great length, but when you listen to the crowd as Mr. Rittenhouse is running, they start yelling after as he's running when they're screaming, "Get him." Also, as people are approaching him at the end, they're asking, "Why did you shoot him? Why did you shoot him?" These are people that were provoked because they witnessed an attack or heard shots or heard he was attacking, and they took action. As Mr. Bringer said, I probably wouldn't do it either. But that they did it is brave, and they did not deserve to be killed. Kyle Rittenhouse has such strong ties to Kenosha, but he needs Google Maps to find a business he says he's driven by every day. He supposedly knows Kenosha so well and is such familiar with Kenosha that he doesn't realize you can walk 1 block either way to get back to the car source. He didn't want to go back to the car source. He wanted to go see what was going on. He wanted to stay in the action. He wanted to continue to do things that would make him feel big and make him feel important. These minor injuries we've heard the defendant have, again, Mr. Richards misstated the standard. It is not could have caused great bodily harm or death. It is not likely to have caused great bodily harm or death. It is imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Where is that when you get a couple scrapes?
A little while, yeah.
Everybody takes a beating sometimes, right? Sometimes you get in a scuffle and maybe you do get hurt a little bit. That doesn't mean you get to start plugging people with your full metal jacket AR-15 rounds, and no, bullets are not bullets. And we heard testimony about that. Mr. Richards mentioned this in opening, but apparently he's noticed that the evidence doesn't bear it out. He talks about this, how Mr. Rosenbaum put this shirt over his head to hide his identity because he's going to go ambush Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, then obviously watch the videos. He's had that shirt on his head for some time. Whether it's COVID, this is all pre-vaccine as we know. Whether it's tear gas, whether it's fire, whatever it is, he's using it to protect his face, not as some evil plan to get Kyle Rittenhouse. They're setting this fire, and they begin walking down Sheridan. There's no evidence that they knew he was coming. There's no evidence that they had any plan to get him. I'd submit to you that the Zeminskis and Mr. Rosenbaum were doing what they were doing all night. They were going to go bash that Duramax or start or stoke a fire. Kyle sees this, and then he runs onto the scene. That's clear in the FBI video. He runs onto the scene. He puts down the fire extinguisher. He raises up his gun. Mr. Rosenbaum yells, "Gun, gun, gun." Why else would he yell that? It's very possible that while he was yelling "friendly, friendly, friendly," he's doing so while holding a loaded AR-15 at the Zeminskis. Mr. Rosenbaum was going to chase him out of there to end the danger. And Mr. Richards boasts that, something along the lines, "You won't do shit, motherfucker." Well, Mr. Rosenbaum was wrong. Oh, that's an attaboy right there. Way to kill someone unarmed because you won't engage them.
Mm-hmm.
He raises the gun. He provokes the attack. He has to retreat. He
Raising
has
a
to
gun
exhaust
provokes the
all
attack now?
remedies before he regains the right to even use self-defense, not even to use deadly force. That's a whole other separate question. He does regain the use right to self-defense if he exhausts all options. He does not. He could have ran a different way. He could have fought. He had all sorts of different ways to exhaust his options. He did not do it. As I said in the beginning of my closing, I don't think you even need provocation. An unarmed man chasing you, and you shoot him 4 times as he's falling, you kill him as he's falling in front of you because you don't want to physically defend yourself, that's first-degree reckless homicide right there. And Mr. Richards kind of plays games with the name reckless. Reckless means not intentional in this circumstance. And you can read the jury instructions. You can come to your own conclusions. And fire an AR-15 in any circumstance like this shows utter disregard for human life. There's no other explanation for it. If you're shooting an AR-15 at close range of people, you have no disregard for human life. That's not really in any dispute. I want to leave you with this. The meaning of reasonable doubt. I'm going to read portions of this instruction. Obviously, you'll have the whole instruction. The term reasonable doubt means a doubt based upon reason and common sense. It is a doubt for which a reason can be given. A reasonable doubt is not a doubt which is based on mere guesswork or speculation. That's what the defense is asking you to do, to guess what Mr. Rosenbaum was doing, to speculate what Mr. Rosenbaum was doing, to speculate and guess what Mr. Huber and this unidentified man were doing. We don't know because
they were yelling, "Get him!"
All we can look at is the evidence and see him standing pretty much straight up or exactly straight up when he was shot in the hip and immobilized. A doubt which arises merely from sympathy or from fear to return a verdict of guilt is not a reasonable doubt. The defense's whole case has been trying to stoke sympathy for Mr. Rittenhouse and showing how everyone else was just a terrible person. Every life counts. Every life matters. If people did bad things that night, they could have been prosecuted. It's not up for Mr. Rittenhouse to be the judge, the jury, and eventually the executioner. A reasonable doubt is not a doubt such as may be used to escape the responsibility of a decision. There's a lot going on in this case. We all know that. We all knew that from the day we walked in on November 1st. But this verdict should be about what the facts are and what Mr. Rittenhouse did. That's what the 12 of you who go to deliberate will go and decide. You are the fact finders. You decide what is beyond a reasonable doubt. You decide what he is guilty or not guilty of from this menu of options that you now have. An imminent threat. The only imminent threat that night was Mr. Rittenhouse. He was
Fucking
not
bull.
acting in legal, justified self-defense. He's guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. Members of the jury, the time has now come when the great burden of reaching a just, fair, and conscientious decision in this case will be placed wholly with you jurors selected for this most important duty. You will not be swayed by sympathy, passion, prejudice, or political beliefs. You will disregard any impression which you may have regarding what you believe to be my opinions on the guilt or innocence of the defendant. You will disregard the claims or opinions of any other person or news media or social networking site. You will pay no heed to
Whatever,
the opinions of anyone,
You don't have-
even the President of the United States or the President before him. The founders of our country gave you and you alone the power and the duty to decide this case based solely on the evidence presented in this court. You will fearlessly keep faith with those who have entrusted to you the fair rendition of justice and the protection of our freedom. You will be very careful and deliberate in weighing the evidence. I charge you to keep your duties steadfastly in mind and as upright citizens
Exactly, Chad.
return just
Exactly.
and true verdicts. You will decide only whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty of the offenses which are charged. Any consequences of your verdict are matters for me alone to decide and must not affect your deliberations. It will be for you to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty as to each of the offenses charged or submitted. You must make a finding as to each count of the information. Each count charges a separate crime, and you must consider each one separately. Your verdict for the crime charged in one count must not affect your verdict on any other. This is a criminal and not a civil case, and therefore, before you can reach a verdict which may lawfully be received, it must be reached unanimously. In a criminal case, all 12 jurors must agree in order to arrive at a verdict. When you retire to the jury room, select one of your members to preside over your deliberations. That presiding juror's vote is not entitled to any greater weight than that of any other juror. We're going to stop at this point, and I'm going to ask that you return tomorrow. I'm going to let you take a vote. When you want to start tomorrow, you can choose 8, you can choose 8:30, you can choose 9. How many would be in favor of starting at 8:30? How many want to start at 9? I missed 8, didn't I? How many still want to start at 8? How many would like to start at 9? All right, that's the clear consensus. Well, it's not a consensus, but clear plurality, probably majority, I think. And so we'll start at 9 tomorrow, as we have been. The case is ready for decision by a jury of 12. We don't have that. And it's just as important as ever. I'd say more so, except that it was always important, that you not discuss the case with anyone. And you won't have to resist that much longer now because you'll be able to decide the case. Please don't read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial or anything to do with the trial. And tomorrow morning we'll assemble, and as I indicated earlier, the tumbler over there will be used. All of your numbers will be placed in there. And 6 of the, well, assuming there are still 18 of you, 6 of them will be drawn out. And those persons will be held in reserve and will not join the 12 in deliberation. We're going to retain you here in the building. Those of you who are not selected will stay here in the building, and in the event that your services are needed as we continue the case. And then the 12 of you who are the jury selected will commence your deliberations at that point. So, again, no talking about the case. Please don't read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. Any questions, anybody? Enjoy the evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Full of the spoons, full of those, and then I mixed it.
Okay.
And a little bit, like a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good stream.
Okay. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right. See you tomorrow. Be here for the. Obviously, you're going to want to be here, and you better be. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I sent them to you electronically. Yeah, about 2:45, I think.
And that pretty much wraps that up, folks. So listen, I'm going to be up and streaming that because I want to. First of all, I want to be there and see what happens when it happens. So be here tomorrow. We'll get that up and running, and yeah, it's gonna be a good one. I'm gonna say not guilty. All right, to those that watch me on a regular basis, I stream every single night except for Sunday on Twitch, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be streaming tonight on Twitch at 9 p.m., guys. So love you, and I'll see you there. Be good, guys. And if you can't be good at it.